All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakah Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And this is going to be First Maccabees, the third chapter, continuing. Um, like I said, as the Spirit permits, I'll keep going through as long as the Spirit permits. But let's get right into it. So last chapter, First Maccabees, the second chapter, um, mainly dealt with the what's his name, Mattathias, okay, the father of Judas Maccabees and his brethren, and how they basically resisted the king's commandment and they started to revolt. Okay, as they call it in the secular history, the Maccabean revolt, and they started fighting back, and they gathered more and more people on their side. And in due time, their father got old, and you know, upon his death, he basically gave them the rundown of things and which brother should be what, and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is continuing on, picking up from there, and at this point, you have the Seleucid Empire or Seleucid Dynasty, which is in power at this time. Okay, over pretty much they had control over Israel. Okay, because a little prior to this, it was always a back and forth between the Ptolemaic dynasty and the Seleucid dynasty, uh, trying to gain control over that middle region, which of course is Israel. All right. So it says here, First Maccabees chapter 3 verse 1. Then his son Judas, right, the son of Mattathias, called Maccabeus, rose up in his stead, and all his brethren helped him, and so did all they that held with his father, and they fought with cheerfulness the battle of Israel. So he gat his people great honor, and put on a breastplate as a giant, and girt his warlike harness about him, and he made battles protecting the host with his sword. And the Lord was definitely with Judas Maccabeus, all right, throughout these battles, okay, to be able to lead these people into war and accomplish these things because the Spirit of the Lord set him up to do that, to help Israel. As a matter of fact, when you read in the book of Daniel 11, all right, it talks about how it actually goes into the history of this part. A part of it deals with us fighting back against the Antiochus Epiphanes and the Seleucid dynasty, because pretty much when you read about it, the capital or one of the capitals was in Antioch after Antiochus, and um, you had Edomites, because that's what when you go back to Alexander's time when he conquered pretty much the known world from about Macedon to like India. After he died and his kingdom was divided, you had the Ptolemies, which had Egypt around that area mainly. But keeping in mind that the Ptolemies at this time were Edomites, okay, that were ruling over the native Egyptians. You also had Israelites that were living in Alexandria, Egypt, and so on and so forth. But pretty much that's what it was like also in Syria as well. You had Edomites that were ruling over Syrians. Okay, so a lot of the Ptolemies here, even the Cleopatra, the first, and all that, they were Edomites. They were not or Hamites or you know or anything like that. Okay. Um, But continuing on, so it says here, verse 4, it says, in his acts he was like a lion, and like a lion's whelp roaring for his prey. For he pursued the wicked and sought them out, and burnt up those that vexed his people. Wherefore, oh, I was saying, Salaki in Daniel 11, that it talks about how the Most High, when they shall fall, the Most High shall help them with a little help, or they shall be helping with a little help, which when you go into the history, as we read on down, as we read further into it, you'll see they did get assistance also from the Romans, but also the Most High did send angels down, to also help them out as well, raising up certain men to do certain things. And it shows you the love the Most High had or has for the nation of Israel, because this was during the period of the Lord's indignation, all right, during the period of his anger. And yet, as I believe Habakkuk who said it, O Lord, in wrath, remember mercy. Okay, so it goes to show you how much love the Lord has um, for the nation of Israel, but really starting with the elect. So it says, wherefore the wicked shrunk for fear of him, and all the workers of iniquity were troubled, because salvation prospered in his hand. He grieved also many kings, and made Jacob glad with his acts. Jacob referring to the nation of Israel. Um, and his memorial is blessed forever. This is dealing with Judas. Moreover, he went through the cities of Judah, destroying the ungodly out of them, and turning away wrath from Israel. Because you can imagine that at this time, that area, all right, the Judah, Jerusalem, it had been overran. You had heathens, but you also had wicked Israelites that were in league with the heathens, living like the heathens, doing these abominable things that had basically taken over the whole place. So the Lord raised up the Hasmoneans, all right, to fight back and basically re-cleanse those lands, reconquer those lands. That's why, as it's saying here, that moreover, verse 8, he went through the cities of Judah, destroying the ungodly out of them, because they had taken it over and they were partaking in ungodly, heathenistic, wicked activities in the Holy Land, and turning away wrath from Israel, because so long as they continued with their wickedness in the land, the Most High's wrath was towards them. So as Judas was destroying them, he was to an extent appeasing the wrath of the Lord. It's like when Suradon imported the heathens into the land of Samaria, and the Lord kept sending lions to go and destroy them because they weren't behaving correctly in the land. Verse 9, so that he was renowned on onto the utmost part of the earth, and he received unto him such as were ready to perish. So those that were in that spirit, of just being ready to lose it all for the Lord, not those that were out here drawing back onto perdition, or those that were in league with the heathens. Okay, but those that knew their power, that were willing to fight for their power and stand up for what's right, because that's what the Maccabees did. They stood up. Okay, the Hasmoneans, that's what they did. They stood up, and didn't say, what, like I think it was the second chapter. It mentioned you had Israelites that refused to obey the king's commandment, but when the armies came against them on the Sabbath day, they refused to fight. They didn't defend themselves, and they were put to death. And so you had an Israelite that said, "Look, we can't just sit here and say, well, because it's a Sabbath, we're not going to do anything, because if we do that, then they're going to just root us out of the earth, and we're the only ones pretty much left that's standing up for the Lord." And guess what happened when they decided to stand firm and fight back? Because they made a decree. And guess what happened when they did? The Lord was with them. So it goes to show you how the Lord works, right? Because here it is, they made a decree to fight on the Sabbath, and yet the Lord still helped them. And in this time, guess what? We're gonna need to be firm and resolute, to not basically give in, okay, and be subject unto the scriptures tell you that. Romans, I believe, 12:2. Be not conformed to the world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Okay, so we're not supposed to be conformed. We're not supposed to bow down and worship the IOTB, the image of the beast. Okay, as they're gonna come with great Second Ezra 16:68. The burning wrath of a great multitude is kindled over you. So they're gonna come again. All right. So it goes on, it says here, then Apollonius gathered the Gentiles together in a great host out of Samaria to fight against Israel. Which thing when Judas perceived, he went forth to meet him, and so he smote him and slew him. Many also fell down slain, but the rest fled. Right? So the Lord put the spirit on him, he took him out. So Judas was he was a great warrior. Okay, because look at all the acts that he was doing. And to be a warrior is not just to have skill. It's not just to know how to swing a sword or evade things. To be a warrior is a heavy percentage of that is your mentality. Okay, because remember that when you go to war, it's not, like I said, it's not just about how quick you can swing a sword and all that, but can you actually do what you need to do? What happens when you see blood? What happens when you see one of your men go down right next to you? What happens when you finally fight this person and disarm them, and now you got to put him to death? So as it says right here, he slew him, right? But that's not. You got people that their conscience will eat them alive for slaying one person on the battlefield. So going to war or being a warrior is not just, oh, I know how to swing and do this. Well, can you actually do the job? Because going to war involves slaying people. So as it says, wherefore Judas took their spoils and Apollonius' sword also, and therewith he fought all his life long. Now when Siron, a prince of the army of Syria, heard say that Judas had gathered unto him a multitude and company of the faithful to go out with him to war, he said, I will get me a name and honor in the kingdom. For I will go fight with Judas and them that are with him who despise the king's commandment. Because what would happen from his standpoint? You got rebels that are revolting, and if and they're gaining traction. If he can put them out or put them down, he's going to be recognized and rewarded by the king. Oh, this is the man who put down this great revolt and so on and so forth. That's why he says he will get him a name. So whenever anybody remembers in his mind, whenever anybody remembers the Maccabean revolt, they will remember his name as the one that put it down. So he made him ready to go up, and there went with him a mighty host of the ungodly to help him and to be avenged of the children of Israel. And you best believe you had wicked Israelites in there as well. It says, and when he came near, because just like you had Israelites that were standing up for their power and fighting against the wicked ones that gave in, you also had wicked Israelites that were so forward in their wickedness that they actually hated the Israelites that wanted to stand for their power. And they wanted to fight against them, and they did fight against them. Just like today. You have us that are standing up for what's right, but you have other Israelites that actually hate us, because we are not on their side, because they want to be conformed to this world and we don't. So yeah, you damn right you had wicked Israelites helping joining in these hosts to fight against their own people. It says, and when he came near to the going up of Beth Horon, Judas went forth to meet him with a small company. Which, when you look up, um, basically a lot of the names that you see in here where they had these different battles and so on and so forth. All right, you can see. Then these are pretty much estimates. Like, it's not 100% exact, but they put like estimates of where they believe these lands to have been. And as you can see, if Jerusalem is over here, Beth Horon is somewhere around here. Okay, as per this diagram or this map, I should say. Okay, so it goes on to read. It says, where we at? Yep, verse 17. It says, who, when they saw the host coming to meet them, they said unto Judas, and this is Judas's army, how shall we be able, being so few, to fight against so great a multitude and so great uh and so strong, seeing we are ready to faint with fasting all this day? So they're saying, look, we've been fasting the whole day. Number one, number two, look at how small we are compared to that big ass army. How the hell are we supposed to win this? Verse 18. Unto whom Judas answered, It is no hard matter for many to be shut up in the hands of a few, and with the God of heaven it is all one, to deliver with a great multitude or a small company. For the victory of battle standeth not in the multitude of an host, but strength cometh from heaven. And that was beautifully said, because the victory is the Lord's and he gives it to who he wants. So it's not about you. It's literally has nothing to do with you. You may be a vessel, but you don't determine, nor your weapons or abilities or features or state or condition does not determine whether you win the battle or not. That is already determined by the Lord. That's what Judas was saying. So regardless of if you've been fasting for a whole day, if you're tired, if their armies are 5 times, 20 times larger than yours, the Most High is the one who determines who's going to win that battle. And that's why he says one is the same for him to use. If he was to make a large army for Israel to fight against what's this guy Siron's army, or if he was to use a small company, it's all the same to him. But the Most High would rather use a small company because it magnifies his name and his power. Like Gideon. Okay, that story of that. Verse 19, it says, For the victory of battle standeth not in the multitude of an host, but strength cometh from heaven. And what's a precept that should come to mind? Isaiah 59 and 19. For when the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against them. So the strength that we're going to get to be able to withstand these armies and these troops and these the dangerous situations out here, these gangs and all the stuff that's going on, is going to come from heaven. The strength that we're going to get to, whether it's spiritual power or some form of divine intervention, it's going to come from heaven. All right. So that even goes into survival. Surviving what's about to happen is not going to be up to you. It's not going to be how much food you have, how hungry you are, how fast you can run. That all of that is going to be set up by the Lord. It says, and they come against us in much pride and iniquity to destroy us, and our wives and children, and to spoil us. But we fight for our lives and our laws. And that's the thing that you can take confidence in, is the fact that your cause, you're in a battle against somebody else, and both of you have reasons why you're fighting, but you are fighting for a cause that is pleasing to the one that determines who's going to win the battle or not, right? So you can take confidence that the Most High will be on your side because you are fighting for Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai. And if the Most High determines who wins and who loses, then what are your chances between you that are fighting to be godly versus those that are fighting to be ungodly? To a godly power, of course, those that are fighting to be godly would be the ones that would win. So keep in mind that when they come against us and they bring all of these things, we're innocent. All right, we're innocent, and the true judge knows that. So we need not fear what they may come with, because they don't determine the outcome. Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, the power we serve, determines the outcome. So it goes on, it says, verse 22, wherefore the Lord himself will overthrow them before our face. As for you, be ye not afraid of them. Now, as soon as he had left off speaking, he leapt suddenly upon them, and so Siron and his host were overthrown before them. And they pursued them from the going down of Beth Horon onto the plain, where were slain about 800 men of them, and the residue fled into the land of the Philistines. And just like that, then began the fear of Judas and his brethren, and an exceeding great dread to fall upon the nations round about them. So the news kept going out, and then they started to fear. Yo, man, yo, you heard about them? Yo, man, they're not playing, man. They're not. I heard you heard they what they did to Siron's army? Damn, man, that's great. Yo, son, hey, man. So the fear started to go up. People were afraid. They were like, yo, because something starts off, and then people barely know about it, they barely hear about it. But as it starts to pick up steam, that's when it becomes more known and more talked about, and then fear depending on what this is, fear starts to set in more and more. So it says here, in so much as his fame came onto the king, and all nations talked of the battles of Judas. Now, when King Antiochus heard these things, now this is Antiochus the fourth Epiphanes, he was full of indignation. Wherefore he sent and gathered together all the forces of his realm, even a very strong army. So he's like, who the hell? What? He opened also his treasure and gave his soldiers pay for a year, commanding them to be ready whensoever he should need them. Nevertheless, when he saw that the money of his treasures failed, and that the tributes of the country were small, because of the dissension and plague which he had brought upon the land in taking away the laws which have been of old time. So because he gave that decree that everybody should leave their laws and come to and do what he did, that basically, like it says, brought that dissension and plague upon the land. Because now the customs, everything was changed, and the tribute comes from basically the land that the things that they make or they get off the land. Now, here's an example. In our laws, we have a land Sabbath. There's a reason you have a land Sabbath. All right. There's a way you're supposed to go about doing things. So when you take away these things, the land is not going to produce or behave the way it's supposed to. And eventually it'll start to affect you. So it says he feared that he should not be able to bear the charges any longer because he had to pay his armies and pay for all different things. But he started running out of money because the tribute started shrinking. It says, nor to have such gifts to give so liberally as he did before, for he had abounded above the kings that were before him. Wherefore, being greatly perplexed in his mind, he determined to go into Persia, there to take the tributes of the countries and to gather much money. So he left Lysias, a nobleman and one of the blood royal, to oversee the affairs of the king from the river Euphrates onto the borders of Egypt. So that would be, taking a look here, you have the Levant area and then you have the Fertile Crescent. So I believe this body of water here, if I'm not mistaken, is the Euphrates, but there's no like indication on here, but it's definitely somewhere along these lines here. Um, and as you can see from this part, because as we're about to read, the Seleucid Empire was basically, I guess, divided up or broken up, not physically per se, but in structure. Okay, so as you can see, he had from this area all the way down to the border of Egypt. I'm sure he had some part up north here as well. But as it says here, it says, and to bring up his son Antiochus until he came again. Now, when you read in here, they don't specify the which Antiochus this is, because you read about the king who's Antiochus, and then you read about his son who's Antiochus. But the king at this time was Antiochus Epiphanes, and his son here was, I believe, Antiochus the fifth, Eupator, which, if I'm not mistaken, I think that means of a good father. Um, but here we're going to read a little bit about Lysias in the secular history. It says he was described, this is dealing with Lysias, Syrian chancellor. It says he was described as a nobleman and one of the blood royal. The Seleucid Empire of the era was huge. It possessed two heartlands, the capital at Antioch in Syria, and a secondary capital in Babylon and Mesopotamia. Seleucid rulers had to aggressively remind their client rulers of their loyalty, lest the client rulers drift towards independence. So you're a king, you set up different rulers under you, and if your land is big enough and you're not careful, those rulers might just separate and declare themselves independent. It says, as happened with various subkingdoms over time. King Antiochus IV Epiphanes left Antioch circa 166 or 165 BCE on an expedition to the eastern satrapies, which is what we're reading in First Maccabees, the third chapter. He would see to affairs in Babylonia, dismiss corrupt or overly independent officials, and attempt to exercise control over the drifting Persian provinces, that would become to what would become the Parthian Empire. Antiochus IV left Lysias in charge of the government of the western half of the empire as regent. Lysias also took guardship of Antiochus' son, who continued to be raised in Antioch. Antiochus then went east with a loyal Greek army into Babylonia and Persia to collect the revenues which were not coming in satisfactorily. All right, so coming back here, as you see in verse 32, so Antiochus left Lysias, a nobleman and one of the blood royal, to oversee the affairs of the king from the river Euphrates onto the borders of Egypt. So that would be the western part or the western heartland, okay, of the Seleucid Empire. It says, and to bring up his son Antiochus until he came again. Because if you click on Antiochus Epiphanes, and you scroll down on the right side, if you take a look at his issue, you'll see Antiochus V Eupator, which is that his son. And I believe the difference between, because you see one here is Antiochus, as you can see, it says the name Antiochus is the female name of Antiochus, Cus, right? So you had the difference there. But the one that we're reading about here in First Maccabees chapter 3, verse 33, his son, is referring to Antiochus V Eupator. Let's see, does it tell us the meaning? Okay, yeah, whose epithet means of a good father. Yep. So continuing on, so Lysias had the western part, as well as he was in charge of raising or bringing up Antiochus' son until Antiochus came back. Moreover, he delivered unto him the half of his forces and elephants, and gave him charge of all things that he would have done, as also concerning them that dwell in Judah and Jerusalem, to wit, that he should send an army. So Antiochus was going, remember when we read up above, when he heard about Judas, he got pissed and he paid all his soldiers, and he was going to basically take them to go and crush this revolt, but he was running out of money. So now he had to go east. And so he set up Lysias to take care of the business and continue the plan that he was originally going to do. Right? So it says, to wit, that he should send an army against them to destroy and root out the strength of Israel and the remnant of Jerusalem, and to take away their memorial from that place. And that he should place, so to do basically to eliminate anybody that was still holding on to what it means to be an Israelite, their heritage, the laws, and all of these things. And all you would have are, you would still have Israelites, but you would just have ones that don't practice or maintain their heritage or customs. And eventually Israelites would still exist, but they would just be living like Gentiles. And you pretty much have a whole bunch of New Testament situations where you have Israelites that don't know they're Israelites. But if all the Israelites became like that, then who would, you know what I mean? Like, who would wake up to wake somebody else up? But that's what Antiochus wanted, right? He wanted to root out anybody that was trying to keep the name of Israel alive. Verse 36, and that he should place strangers in all their quarters and divide their land by lot. So pretty much go in there and just take them all out and put heathens in there, just take over the whole place. So the king took the half of the forces that remained and departed from Antioch, his royal city, the 147th year. And having passed the river Euphrates, he went through the high countries. Then Lysias chose Ptolemy, the son of Dorimenes. Now, this is not referring to the Ptolemy, king of Egypt. It says, Nicanor and Georgius, mighty men of the king's friends. And with them he sent 40,000 footmen and 7,000 horsemen to go into the land of Judah and to destroy it as the king commanded. So they went forth with all their power. And came and pitched by Emmaus in the plain country. Once again, this is a diagram that shows the different approximation of the different locations here. So it says, And the merchants of the country, hearing the fame of them, took silver and gold very much with servants, and came into the camp to buy the children of Israel for slaves. A power also of Syria and of the land of the Philistines joined themselves onto them. So pretty much when they heard Georgias, Ptolemy, Nicanor, damn, all these guys, they coming. So they pretty much figured in their mind that, oh, the Israel is definitely done. They're through. And then once they take them over, we're gonna have slaves. We're gonna have buy their children and women. Oh, so they came ready. It says, verse 42. Now, when Judas and his brethren saw the miseries, saw that miseries were multiplied, and that the forces did encamp themselves in their borders, for they knew how the king had given commandment to destroy the people and to utterly abolish them. So news traveled, and they already knew what was getting ready to go down. They said one to another, "Let us restore the decayed fortune of our people, and let us fight for our people and the sanctuary." Then was the congregation gathered together, that they might be ready for battle, and that they might pray and ask mercy and compassion. Now Jerusalem lay void as a wilderness. There was none of her children that went in or out. The sanctuary also was trodden down. The aliens kept the stronghold. The heathen had their habitation in that place, and joy was taken from Jacob, and the pipe with the harp ceased. Because remember, they had set up a fortress in the city of David. They had, basically taken over and set themselves up in Jerusalem, and blocked they defiled the sanctuary. So it became overran, all right, by the heathen. Verse 46, wherefore the Israelites assembled themselves together and came to Maspah, which is Mizpah, when you read in the in the blue letter, or in the non-apocryphal version. It says, over against Jerusalem, for Maspah or Mizpah was the place where they prayed aforetime in Israel. Then they fasted that day and put on sackcloth and cast ashes upon their heads and rent their clothes and laid open the book of the law, wherein the heathen had sought to paint the likeness of their images. They brought also the priest's garments and the firstfruits and the tithes, and the Nazarites they stirred up, who had accomplished their days. Then cried they with a loud voice toward heaven, saying, what shall we do with these? Whither shall we carry them away? Oh, and whither shall we carry them away? For thy sanctuary is trodden down and profaned, and thy priests in heaviness and brought low. Yeah, because the priest garments, the first fruits, the tithes, the Nazarites, this would all be pertaining to the temple or the sanctuary. Okay, where would the priests wear their garments? Where would you bring the first fruits to offer it? The tithes, where would you bring that? The Nazarites, where would they come to have the sacrifice done for them for the accomplishment of their days? So as they were basically crying to the Lord, saying, so now what are we gonna do? Because the sanctuary, the temple is trodden down, is profane, the priests are in heaviness and brought low, and lo, the heathen are assembled together against us to destroy us. What things they imagine against us, thou knowest. How shall we be able to stand against them, except thou, O power, be our help? Then sounded they with trumpets and cried with a loud voice. And after this, Judas ordained captains over the people, even captains over thousands and over hundreds and over fifties and over tens. But as for such as were building houses, or had betrothed wives, or were planting vineyards, or were fearful, those he commanded that they should return every man to his own house according to the law. So he didn't allow them to go to war with him, which when you go into the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 20, okay, all right, Deuteronomy 20:4, it says, for the Lord your God, for Yahweh your power, is he that goeth with you to fight for you against your enemies to save you. And the officers shall speak unto the people, saying, what man is there that hath built, and of course Judas would know this because he was a priest. See, Judas wasn't just a warrior, right? It wasn't just, oh, Judas Maccabees, he was just a warrior. All he did was fight, fight, fight. He was a priest as well. So he knew these things, all right? All of them. They were knowledgeable of the laws and the history and all of these things, all right? They weren't just people with swords running around and just knowing how to fight. Because they depict that often in like a lot of like like a lot of different shows and movies and stuff like that. They'll just show like, oh, this guy's a warrior, but that's pretty much all he is. He's just like good at fighting, but he doesn't really know how to draw up strategies or any of these things. But that wasn't the case here. So it says, and the officer shall speak unto the people, saying, what man is there that hath built a new house and hath not dedicated it? Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in battle, and another man dedicate it. And what man is he that hath planted a vineyard, and hath not eaten yet of it? Let him go also and return unto his house, lest he die in battle, and another man eat of it. And what man is there that hath betrothed a wife, and hath not taken her? Let him go and return unto his house, lest he die in battle, and another man take her. So pretty much, betrothed meaning that he was espoused, engaged, but he hadn't popped, right? He hadn't taken her, all right. And so that's why it says, let him go and take her, all right. Go and do what you got to do. And also, I mean, if you think about it, it makes sense because if you were just newly engaged, you haven't even laid with your woman, you haven't none of that, and you going to war, where's your mind gonna be at? You're gonna be all timid, and you're not gonna be able to focus on war. When you go to war, like I mentioned earlier, your mindset has to be completely different. Okay, you got to have the mindset to be able to risk it all and understand that going to war, there's no guarantee that you'll come back alive. All right. And somebody that just got a wife or just got engaged and hasn't been with his wife, going to war thinking that he might not come back is going to put fear in him because he's thinking about his wife. And so the Lord, and many other situations like we mentioned about the house and the vine, and so the Lord already knew these things, and that's why this law is in there. So it goes on to read. It says, verse 57, so the camp removed and pitched upon the south side of Emmaus, and Judas said, arm yourselves and be valiant men, and see that ye be in readiness against the morning, that ye may fight with these nations that are assembled together against us to destroy us and our sanctuary. For it is better for us to die in battle than to behold the calamities of our people and our sanctuary. Nevertheless, as the will of God is in heaven, so let him do. Okay, and that's how he exhorted them. So that's also another thing, the exhortation, because there were many times when fighting in situations like this, you would get discouraged, seeing the size of the army coming against you, seeing all these things. But that's why the scriptures say what was written aforetime was written for our learning, and you can learn from the tactics Judas used, not only to be a great warrior but to be a great leader, because he would exhort his armies, but not like when you read about it, and they were like they complain about having fasted and the large size of the army, but he would use scriptures and he would use different accounts, and call back to remembrance the things of the past to exhort them and to take them out of the thought of how they're currently feeling, or the carnality or the fear, and to put them into a mindset of being ready and amped up to stand up for their power. Okay. And that's why we always have to refer back to the scriptures. That's why these accounts, these historical records are written, because they remind you that you are not the first to go through a bad or a tough situation. You are not the first to have your faith tested. In fact, there have been many others before you that have been through much more faith trying situations. So to read of their accounts, to hear about it, to remember it will give you strength to know that this person was in a much tougher temptation, and yet they stood firm and they got delivered. So how much less for me, or how much more for me in the situation I'm in? All right. So yeah, that was pretty much it on First Maccabees, the third chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. Shalom, shalom to all you that were listening. Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai Brakatham. Why? I want to give all praises to Yahweh Bahasham Yahushai Bahasham Rachakodash. Until next time, shalom.